I think we'll have to go through all this shit every time. Okay, here we are.
All right, three, two, one. Welcome back, guys, to Hollywood to the Heartland with Connor, Quinn, and Anthony Powell with Beau Tiffany. That's me. Connor, Anthony, thank you for coming back. This is episode 2. How are we doing today?
Doing
Doing
great.
well, man. It was a busy Easter Sunday in the world of voiceover and on camera. It's definitely an Easter to remember. I've been doing
Right.
auditions since early in the morning, and the auditions never stop in this business. A word to the wise for those wanting to get into it.
That's right. Yep. That's the way, you have to constantly fill in sales, they call it a funnel. You
Yeah,
have to constantly fill that funnel. And the way we do that is most actors and voiceovers is
yeah.
we do auditions. You don't get the work if you don't do the auditions.
The toughest part for me is the on-camera auditions because my wife always accuses me of being a total diva because I tell her how the camera, how her phone needs to be horizontal, not vertical. And then if I want to do another take, she says, "Oh, it was good enough." And I'm like, "No, I messed up.
One
I've got
more
to do it
time.
again."
Anthony Powell,
Uh,
diva at large.
I brace when I ask. I'm like, "I've got some auditions. Can you help me?" I'm like,
Let me ask about that a little bit. Starting out, is perfectionism a thing? You obviously get used to things, and so you don't do as many takes and you know what they want more. So, how has preparing changed for you from starting out till now?
I was a newscaster, as I described in our first episode, for many years. So I got used to reading a teleprompter. But with some of my on camera auditions, you can have a teleprompter. But like my audition today, which happened to be for one state's lottery, quite often they want you to memorize. I was telling Conor on a phone call earlier today when we were discussing our podcast. I'm old school. I get my 3x5 cards out like I'm back in high school, and I break each sentence down and I'm like, memorize one, move on to the other. I got in this audition that I'm mentioning, I would say I got about 98% of the lines. I twisted a few and I begged my wife to do another take, but she wouldn't do it. It was good enough. But yeah, the memorization can definitely be a challenge. I feel like sometimes I'm studying for an exam, and a lot of times I do get to use a teleprompter. That, of course, makes it easier. But if you can memorize, it looks a little bit more natural. Sometimes there's still a little bit of eye movement on a teleprompter, even though I've used one for so many years. I've gotten pretty adept at it, but
That
uh,
leads me to a
better to
second
memorize.
question.
Yeah.
So, if you have a bad memory, can you still be an actor?
That would be challenging, especially if you were like a main character on a movie or a TV show. There's a lot of Now, I've never been a main character. All my roles have been small ones, so the memorization hasn't been that challenging. But
Me too. But for example, Little House on the Prairie, you'll have lines, and you have the color of the sheet tells you what version of the script you have. So you
yeah,
may have memorized the blue script or whatever. You get to the set, and like 20 minutes before they're going to shoot, they hand you another sheet with a change that you have to memorize on the fly for that coming scene, and you've got 20 minutes to memorize it. For me, it was no big deal as a small actor, but if you're Melissa Gilbert or if you're one of these people that, like he said, it's a main character, my God, it could be multiple pages that you're getting changes on that they want to change the dialogue or something.
how often did you have lines on Little House when you were on there?
Just a few times. Most of the time,
Yeah,
I was just background. Most of us kids were there for when they shot for the schoolhouse or the church or something like that. Probably twice. Yeah, not very much.
Where was the set for Little House?
It was north of LA, about an hour. It's called Big Sky Ranch. Almost every Western you can think of was shot out there, like Gunsmoke and The Lone Ranger. It's a long way out there. You had to get up. I remember getting up at 4 a.m., getting prepared, and you had to be out there on the set about 6 a.m. to do makeup, hair, and wardrobe, which it's fine if you're 35, 40 years old, but as a little boy at 6 years old, that's, and to get that kind of day started, you have to be in bed by 7 p.m., which is hard for a little kid.
this
Uh,
was an interesting situation. I got cast. As we talked about, I'm in Wichita, a couple of hours from Oklahoma City, where Conor lives, and Oklahoma, like several states, has exploded with film production and TV production because of establishing favorable, tax breaks for Hollywood. So I've done about 3 movies down in Oklahoma. Sorry. And one of them, and I don't want to reveal the name of it because until it comes out, I was cast as a news anchor for a big stretch there. I was thinking that they were going to have a teleprompter now I had it memorized, but I was hoping maybe they would have it. They didn't. And so that was kind of interesting because there was quite a big chunk of dialogue there. And then I was leaving the set and I'm driving back to Wichita. I'm on I-35. I get a call from the assistant director and she says, "Oh, you know what? If you haven't gotten too far, we'd love you to come back and shoot the role of a reporter." So I come back, I change, they hand me the script for the reporter. I had a little time to memorize it, and there we go. So in that case, having a pretty good memory served me well.
It's our second episode. We touched on some of the, I would call them resume of how you got into what you do. But let's walk people into a little bit of your backgrounds. So, Conor, why don't we start with you? Was Little House on the Prairie the first gig that you got? And how was it that you got into the industry?
So I got in the industry in a weird. My grandfather worked in Hollywood. He worked for a place called CBS Television City in Hollywood, which is where, for many years up until a few months ago, as of the date of this podcast, The Price is Right was filmed there, but they've now moved that to another studio. But he was a cameraman for that and several other um, soap operas and that sort of thing. And we would occasionally go out and visit him and that sort of thing. And one day when we were out there, he asked if I'd like to meet Winnie the Pooh. So for a little boy in 1977, Winnie the Pooh was where it was at. So of course I was very excited as a 6, 7-year-old boy. He met with all these journeymen and riggers and all these roustabout guys that work on sets. They're a tough kind of crowd back then. And but one of the people that would hang out with him at this Greasy Spoon restaurant for lunch was the actor Sterling Holloway, who was the voice of Winnie the Pooh. I was really confused as a little kid because he looked nothing like Winnie the Pooh, but yet he talked like him. So I was mesmerized. When I left, he asked my grandfather, "Does your grandson do a British accent?" And my grandfather, without even taking a beat, said, "Yes, of course." I didn't even know what a British accent was. And he said, "Well, Christopher Robin's grown up and they're doing these storyteller records for cassettes and records, and they want to go younger with Christopher Robin. Would he audition?" So my grandfather said yes. So he and my dad worked for 3 or 4 weeks trying to get me to do a British accent. It was the worst. They're from Oklahoma. So two Oklahomans trying to teach a 6-year-old how to do it made Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins sounded way better than I did. And so anyway, I did the audition. It was at their Burbank studios for Walt Disney. And guess because I had the blessing of Mr. Holloway, I got it. So my first gig was with Disney doing these storyteller records as Christopher Robin. And from that, one of the assistants knew the head of casting for Little House on the Prairie and recommended me for their background children. And that's how I got that gig. And like I said, we shot it in the Simi Valley, which is in this part was about an hour north of Los Angeles. And so while it was Hollywood, we didn't have we didn't have indoor plumbing. We had outhouses. It wasn't really Hollywood, but it was. We all ate together underneath these oak trees and picnics. It was great. It was like an adventure. And you talked about, do you have to be like perfectionism for acting? And for me as a child, you're told so no as an actor. Period. You're told no so many times, or I just couldn't figure out why you're doing these auditions, just hundreds of them, but you're not getting anything. So I couldn't understand, why are we doing this? Why am I just, it's like hitting your head against a brick wall, but what am I getting for it? And then occasionally, oh, wow, you've got a Reese's commercial, or you've got a once in a blue moon, something will give. But
See those magic words on an email, booking.
yes, that's very true.
Well,
And in
back
those
then
days,
you didn't have,
no email, right? It was
right.
my agent calling me saying,
Yeah, right,
can you
right,
be at Paramount in an hour and you need
right.
to be in a clown outfit? And I think it really hurt me. To this day, I still deal with it, about everything about your life. If that guy or that woman and the producer likes me or thinks I'm good, if I don't hear that, then I'm thinking I'm not worth anything. So it really affects you as a person, because since I was the age of 6, I'm been told no. It's like, oh, you're not tall enough, you're not thin enough, you're not fat enough, you're not. It's always something.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I know, like, on a lot of my on-camera auditions, or every one of them, they make you say your height. I'm 6'4". I've started saying I'm 6'3.5". It's like the difference between saying $20 and 19.99. I'm hoping that
Right.
6'3.5" won't sound as, because I know, and I'm not saying that's the only reason that I wouldn't book a role, but I know that when you're getting paired up with people, like I just auditioned for a casino shoot, and I know if they're going to pair me up with someone, they don't want someone like towering like the gargantuan over the other, because a lot of Hollywood leading men, I'll never forget seeing when I still lived out in LA, and my brother and I were in Malibu where we grew up, or eating lunch, we saw Sylvester Stallone, and a lot of these leading men are not that tall.
It's true. Like Tom Cruise and
Yeah, they're all
some of
about
them.
5'8", and you think they're taller. Tom Selleck was a big guy. He's one that kind of stands out. But Conor and I were back to the auditioning. Great point. I think that's a misconception about this business. There is so much work that
Hmm.
goes on behind the scenes, namely auditioning to, and like I did between voiceover and on camera today, I did probably 15 auditions. There's a good chance I won't book one of them. And Connor was telling me that in Australia they're paying people for auditions. That would be great. I'm all
Can you
for
imagine?
that. I'm
So
all for that.
whoever's listening to this podcast, you might be an actor, or maybe you're just listening for the heck of it, or maybe you want to be an actor, or maybe you want to do podcast hosting like Beau or whatever. This whole podcast is really about is that you don't have to live in Hollywood. I lived in Hollywood for a lot of period of my life as a child actor, but the bulk of my work for voiceovers has really been done outside of Hollywood because the technology allows for it. The technology allows for Beau to host a podcast and have guests from Hong Kong and Germany and New York and wherever. And me and Anthony work with producers all over the world that are directing us to do very big commercials and very big non-broadcast voiceovers. So it is possible that if you live in the Midwest or a flyover state or somewhere that's not New York or Los Angeles, you can make it in this business. And you just don't have to listen to the bulk of people telling you, but you have to have you have to have the right coach and you have to have the right $3,000 demo. All that is just figments of the imagination. You don't have to have all that stuff. You don't have to have a $8,000 microphone to make it in this business.
That's why I think the name of our podcast is just nails it,
Mm,
because here we are, growing up in Hollywood, and we're all three living in the Heartland. I've experienced much more work in the Heartland than I ever did in LA in terms of being on camera. There's just a lot more opportunity. When you're in
yeah.
LA, you're competing against so many people. And
God.
here in the Midwest, there's a lot of projects available to you. Most of the projects in LA are going to be union projects. But where
Very,
we
very true.
live, there's just a ton of non-union stuff. I do union and non-union. I've declared FICOR for those in the
Yeah,
industry.
FICOR.
I mean, that means you can do union and non-union.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of work available everywhere, especially in the voiceover world with remote studios. Most people don't live in Hollywood or New York for voiceover, wouldn't you say?
Oh no, totally. Now, back in the day in the 70s and 80s, you go into a room. One time I met, there was probably 30 of us in there. I was just a young buck. I was like 14. But these guys, one of the producers looked in there and said, this room of 30 people, of men and women, they do 80% of all voiceovers in the English speaking world.
Yeah,
So that at that time you could fit them. And I remember becoming a voiceover was such a big dream. It's like I had to slave away doing on camera commercials, wanting
yeah.
to get into voiceover, but it was such a niche industry. And those people, if they didn't like you and you didn't work in there, you just would never get to work. It was a tough thing to get in. Now you have people all over working because we have Source Connect and IPDTL, and we have all these wonderful software that's above my pay grade that makes it possible. Somehow there's pixie dust in that stuff that allows us to talk with people like Beau is in Wisconsin and I'm in Oklahoma, whatever, just what we're doing right now. Anthony, you're in Kansas, I'm in Oklahoma, and Beau's in
Right.
Wisconsin. This could not have been done like this
No,
ever.
no business was affected more by the internet than voiceover, because Connor was saying, I wanted to get into voiceover too. I remember being in LA trying to do it, and they're saying, oh, it's a closed field, it's a closed field. But
Yeah,
once the internet came online and people started establishing their own home studios, that opened it up to a ton more people. And then, of course, video became such a big thing that you have literally thousands and thousands of video
true.
production
Yeah,
now
it
that
was
are
a it was a
looking to cast voices for their videos that go on websites or whatever.
whatever, yeah. It was a gated community basically. And if you
Yeah.
didn't know the gatekeeper or you didn't have the right agent that did that, you would be ignored and you just would never get in the business. Nowadays, predominantly most of the people doing voiceovers don't have agents. So unless you're really obsessed with doing major brands, which I know that's wonderful, McDonald's or Disney and stuff that I'm fortunate I'm able to do, you have to have an agent for that stuff. But there
Yeah.
is plenty of work if you're wanting to dip your toe into acting and voiceover. Plenty of non-broadcast stuff for big clients that you don't need an agent for. You don't worry about that. Let focus on getting your tone right of being natural and getting a microphone that fits your voice. Worry about acting, the foundation of everything you need to do. You need to learn how to act before you need to worry about getting an agent. Especially the agents today are completely different than they were for me 20 years ago.
Let me
Right.
ask you a question quick. There's different sides to the job, right? One is knowing how to be a voiceover actor, voice timbre, pace, all the things that you're talking about just now. The other side of that is how does someone get a gig? If you don't have an agent, how do you find the listings? How do you find out what to apply for?
Well,
I
it's
think
funny that
a
you
lot
say
of
that. Go ahead.
the problem is not knowing the questions to ask. So with that in mind, what kind of tidbits do you have for people?
I think one of the most biggest misconceptions that I've seen, I don't know if that's proper English, what I just said, but who cares? It's too late.
You're not reading a
Uh,
script. Who cares?
yeah, yeah, I can't read. That's the secret. No, I think there's a lot of people out in the voiceover acting world that are preying upon the newbies, selling them the right coaching, the right technique, and make sure you hold your mouth a certain way. And people get involved with that. What you need to get involved with is you need to learn how to be yourself and be comfortable in your skin and talk
Yeah.
and learn to read. There's a whether you're going to be a newscaster or in radio or doing voiceover or even be an actor, you this type of reading comes with the only way you're going to get it down is by reading, by actually working and doing it yourself. And what it's like is basically as I'm reading a script, my eyes are scanning ahead to see what's coming up ahead and to tell my mouth, get ready, because the word dating game is coming up or the word whatever is coming up. And that's only something that you gain by lots of practice and lots of work. And I think the biggest misconception is that there's a million quote voice over coaches out there that'll help you. And they will sell you that $3,000 demo that you don't need and all this other stuff. But with all that being said, they don't really tell you, how do I get work? That is the toughest. That is the, I don't know, the hidden gem in voiceover is I've learned all this. I've got the microphone, I've got the computer, but now what? Where do I go get work if I don't have an agent? There's plenty of work out there.
Yeah.
And you have to learn techniques that there's coaches that are very, very focused on that. I know Anthony does, and I myself do. We do teach that, but you don't have to go to one of us. I'm not advertising for us. You can go to a coach that specifies in marketing. So number one, you better have that acting down. And number two, you need to know how to market yourself because
Yeah.
without either one of those, you're not going to work. Anthony, what were you thinking?
I tell people who come to me about voiceover, I said it really comes in stages. First, you've got to figure out a place where you're going to record your audio because you've got to
Yes.
have good, clean audio.
Yeah, true.
And
Absolutely.
and when I was starting out, I was scared to death of setting up a home studio. I was like, how am I going to ever figure this out? And literally, the equipment I bought sat on my desk for 2 years because I was just like, I can't, there's no way I can figure it out. And believe me, there's been a lot of profanity because Conor and I will compare notes on the technical issues of it. And I'll tell you, the technical issues are one of the most difficult part of voiceover because you can have a little hum in your audio and it's like being a scientist trying to detect where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So the technical part is difficult. You got to learn
Yes.
that. You got to learn how to record clean audio. You got to record an audio file. Then you got to learn, like Conor said, the sound today is not the sound of yesteryear. for the most part, where the big announcer voice is.
Right.
Most times, and Conor does a great announcer, and there's still a market for that. But I would say the vast majority of the times, the instructions you get on the script are, we want somebody, the everyday guy, the natural guy. And for me, I learned that. I have had some excellent coaches who realized that I'd come from a news broadcast experience where everything is pretty big. Breaking news tonight, 5 people in an accident or so and
God, he's so good at that.
so.
No wonder he did that for a living.
So I had to learn how to tone it down. So there are a lot of great coaches out there. And I do think people getting started definitely need some coaching. What we find, though, a lot of times, that people have been in it for a few years and they're spending all their time doing workshops and coaching, but they're wondering, why aren't they getting any work? And that's the part 2 of the equation. And
Yeah.
again, Conor is so good at this. He's taught me a lot. It's mostly about direct marketing. You've got to reach out to people. You got to get on their radar. You got to get on they call them rosters. So they'll send you auditions. So there's a variety, but everyone's under this misconception that agents are the answer. Agents are definitely a spoke in the wheel, especially for the bigger jobs. They have I
Yeah.
booked about a month ago with my agent out in San Francisco that I never would have had access to. Even the top guys will tell you they book maybe Conor, 5% of agent auditions?
Yeah, that's a good, healthy thing. It's
Yeah.
because you are competing with others. And if you are getting into dipping your toes into voiceover, there's several things you need to know. There's pay to play sites or P2P sites. So there's various, I don't really want to give them any advertising, but you can Google and find out you pay to play. So
Yeah.
you pay upwards of $400 a month. Some of them are crazy, and
$400 a year.
$400 a year, not 400. Yeah, my bad. Thank you.
No.
And there's a reason I'm a
Feels
voice.
like $400 a month.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
And so you pay that, and it gives you, quote, access to these jobs. But you're competing with thousands of other people that are on that site, maybe 3,000 people. And on that particular job, maybe 400 people applied for the job. Honestly, they're probably not going to even hear yours. A person could only sit so long listening to someone read the same script over and over. They're going to find the guy or girl and move on. So there's pay to play, and then there's dozens of rosters where me and Anthony agree. This is where you get on the roster,
Yeah.
and it's a smaller group of people. They might have 50 to 100 people on the roster. So you're only auditioning or competing against maybe 50 to 100 people, or even 300. That's much better than what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, some of them are pared down to where his client may say, I've picked these 6 voices off of your roster. Can you have them audition? So now you're competing with 6 other guys, and that's way better and you're not having to pay to play. So I really am not in favor of pay to play. That's probably for another podcast. That's a whole issue in and of itself. It does work for some people. Other people struggle on it. I just like to be ahead of my own destiny. I want to market to people and build relationships with clients that'll keep me busy forever. I don't want to pay to plays. It's just like for lack of better, it's like a one night stand. You do the job and they move on.
Let me ask you guys this. You've been in the industry a long time. How has the industry changed in this regard, and where is it going forward? Is it more of these internet sites where you're one of thousands and they're just quickly clicking through the links and everybody's doing their line and they find someone they like? Or how is the industry now and where are we headed?
With on camera, it's still, for me anyway, it's still a lot of the same way that it was in LA, meaning my on camera auditions and hopefully converted work comes from, I would say 95% of the time, agents. That still seems to be an agent driven market because there's just not as much on camera work as there is voiceover. Voiceover, there is so much work out there. Think about all the different places that need voices. The list is the scope of projects I've done, I never would have imagined. It's commercials, it's video games, it's
On hold,
corporate narration. Basically, with on camera, it's auditioning for commercials, for movies, TV, sometimes some spokesperson work when you're reading a teleprompter. But again, there's just not the volume of work. So most of mine, I did want to say earlier how it's changed in terms of auditioning as a result of COVID. The home audition has now become a thing, which has been really nice for me. I hate saying anything. I'm not insinuating anything good came out of COVID. Obviously, it's a horrible thing, and I don't mean to in any way make light of it. But before COVID, because I live in Wichita, Kansas, I would be driving 3 hours for an on-camera audition in Kansas City, 10-minute audition, turn around, drive back. 3 hours down to Norman, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma City, back. Now you're able to do an audition in your home like I did today and just upload it via your computer. So that's been definitely a convenience thing. I do miss the contact you get with the casting director because there's some great ones out there who really give you direction if you are auditioning in person. And if I had a really big role, I would make the drive so I was there in person. But usually I weigh it out and it makes more sense for me to do it at home. So that's been one thing that's changed, but definitely more voiceover work out there than on camera.
Conor?
Yeah, it's really changed. Back when I started in the 70s in LA, all the way through the 90s, it was every day checking messages before even smartphones and cell phones. We had pagers, and I was constantly checking my voice. We didn't call it voicemail. We call it our answering machine or answering service. I had
Yeah.
an answering service, and I was always checking in with them and my agent to see if I got work and or an audition. If I had an audition, I had to drive from Granada Hills, which is in the San Fernando Valley. I'd have to drive from there to my agent's office in Beverly Hills, and you're fighting traffic and the heat and all the other. At the time, I remember I went a car with no air conditioning, and you're in the heat of LA with all the traffic, and you had to get there by a certain time to do the audition. You only had time to do a couple of auditions a day. You're driving all over God knows where, and you're having to pay for gas. So it was a lot. It was taxing, and it was hard on me as a kid, just anticipating what the director or casting directors are saying. Maybe they don't like the way I look, or they don't like my shirt, or hearing that negativity every day, it builds up. And but yet you're supposed to go on and put a smile. That's the real acting job, is acting like everything's good, and I'm just gonna. The mental challenges was out of this world.
Yep.
Moving forward, when I was working from home before COVID, thanks to technology, that was really changed. So now I literally can do 20 to 30 auditions a day if I have time from my home without having to drive somewhere, put gas in my car.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, again, I've lost several friends during COVID. I caught COVID and was really sick. So it was a horrible thing, is a horrible thing. But for voiceover, for me, a lot of my friends that were in different industries really took a beating with COVID. And for voiceover, it created a lot of niche industries with COVID. You had to do COVID videos for businesses that wanted to start getting back to work and taking ownership. And so it really flourished for voiceovers during COVID because we were trying to get the message out that we're still in business. A lot of businesses were sending those messages out.
That movie that I was mentioning that I was on in Oklahoma, I shot my role in October of 2020. I remember getting a big COVID test in the mail. I had to test at home. Then when I got down there, I tested several times. And while I was doing my role, the set got shut down several times. And that's why the movie is yet to be released.
Yeah.
Because it was shut down with COVID so much. But we were talking about, I would had flashbacks to when I was starting out as an actor. After graduating from college, I moved back out to Malibu, and Malibu's a long distance from Hollywood. And I would literally pack my car up in the morning. I had my headshots in a box and my resumes.
Right.
I packed a lunch. I had my Thomas Brothers map guide, and I had plenty of change too, because as Conor was talking about, every half an hour I would pull over, put the coins in the payphone to check my answering service to
Right.
see if I had any auditions, or because I wouldn't get back to Malibu till late in the afternoon when had to go do my bartending job. So it was an all day thing. And
Yeah.
Technology has just changed. Obviously, now with cell phones, we're contacting you. Now I check my email 1,000 times a day instead of putting
Yes.
money in a payphone 1,000 times a day.
That's right. You had to worry about parking, especially in LA.
Oh yeah,
One of the greats, one of the legends in voiceover. If you don't know who he is, you need to Google him. His name is Don LaFontaine. Really, he was a wonderfully
in a
sweet man.
world.
Yep, in a world. He was a really kind guy. Fortunately, I was able to work with him on several projects, and he was a much older than all of us kids, but me and another guy had a film project, and we wanted Fontaine to participate. So what we did is I was going to be on the street, and my buddy was going to be my cameraman. When we went Don LaFontaine on a wired microphone, following me, narrating my every move. And so the film is, and so Conor Quinn gets up to Sunset Boulevard. He looks left. He looks right. He was poor guy. We had him going through the chase. So we were going to all these embarrassing places. I don't want to mention any. We were going to we were trying to get him to say the most stupidest thing. But anyway, my story, the reason I mentioned Don is everyone thought he was pretentious, but he wasn't. He had a limo. So everyone thought, oh my God, what an ego. No, he was genius. He had a limo because in LA,
Yeah,
nobody is going to ticket a double parked limo in Los Angeles because it's stars and so he
yeah.
hired a driver, and he had this old limo that he had refurbished, and that he could do lots of auditions during a day and recording sessions. They would drive him right in front of the studio. They double park. He gets out, goes in, does it, gets back in the limo, goes to the next place. That's why he made like $1 trillion. It was anyway. So sorry, a little bit off topic, but
See,
No, I
stop.
didn't realize. I didn't know that you worked with Don LaFontaine. I don't
yeah,
think.
just
Really?
briefly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Because
he was, I think, head of marketing at one of the studios, Paramount or one of those.
oh
I'm sure we'll be corrected on it, but he wasn't doing voiceovers, and he was writing the promo copy for the trailers, and he had a great voice and whatever, and so he would do like a click track or what they wanted to sound. They got to where the client was just like, "Why don't you do it, Charles? Don, you sound better than we do," or the other guys. So I think one day a guy didn't show up or he was late for the session. So Don recorded it, and the client was like, oh my God, it's the voice of God. And that's what he was nicknamed, voice of God.
to this day, you'll still occasionally get auditions with, "We want a Don LaFontaine in a world" type.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
So
And there's other people like my mentor was Hal Douglas. He was the other in a world voice, but Don did the action adventure stuff with Rambo and Arnold Schwarzenegger and bombs going off. And or Hal Douglas did the softer, sweeter films, the rom-coms and stuff like that. And I really love replicating his voice. But Hal was like, she was a cop, he was a killer, and together they're cops and robbers. Begins November 24th at a theater in a world gone desperately. He usually did the comedies, but I
yeah,
really miss his voice. I wish recently on Twitter they were saying, what one actor would you bring back? There's two. One, I would probably bring back Phil Hartman or Hal Douglas because I really miss that sound, that warm sound.
Yeah.
again, we can't stress enough because for people who live, let's say, in Kansas or Oklahoma or Wisconsin, where we all live, the thought of getting into the business is so overwhelming. But again, there are a lot of opportunities. By far and away, the most meaningful project I've ever been involved with, I shot just a year ago in Salina, Kansas. It was a music video for the artist Dax. He's a Canadian rapper. He's gotten really
Right.
big today. And I was sitting at my desk right where I am now in March of 2023. I got an email from a casting director in LA. She said, "Hey, I think you'd be right for this role. Are you available tomorrow to go up to Salina?" I didn't even know what it was for. I meet this guy, Dax, and I find out the videos for his song To Be a Man. And
Oh, yeah.
they put me in a pickup truck in the beginning. I play a guy that's distraught, feeling the pressures of being a man. But anyway, so from that little project to this day, the video's been viewed 22 million times. To this
What?
day, oh yeah. To
Oh, my
this day, I get YouTube comments from people like, "Man, you really captured what I feel all the time." And by
God.
this video and the song has impacted so many people across the world. And here I am sitting a video in Salina, Kansas. The director was from the crew was from LA, but the director
Right.
was from Salina, so he wanted to come to his hometown and shoot the video there. But again, that's an example. There
Oh, my
is work
God.
to be had right here in the heartland.
And it's also a thing, a testimony to voiceover talent that pretty much not a week goes by that someone doesn't come up and tell me that my voice affected them in some way or that they grew up with my voice. It makes me want to cry. It just really, this business is so tough. So for anyone thinking it's an easy buck, you need to go find something else to do. Open up a Subway franchise or do, I don't know.
It's
I wear so many hats. I work harder now. I work harder now
oh,
than when I was a kid. And I really thought that was a lot of work. I work harder now to keep this afloat, keep that marketing going, to do auditions, to do jobs. But stuff like what Anthony's sharing 22 million times. And
incredible.
the podcast that we've done and I've done with Beau, the feedback we get that you our voice changes someone's lives, or maybe it inspired or informed them. That makes it all worthwhile. Because the big secret, good thing I'm not on a podcast declaring this, which I am. I would actually work for free because I enjoy it so much.
You put in a lot of free hours.
We do, but I have to eat and my car's not paid off yet, so I have to work. But the
Yeah.
secret is I would do this for free because I've done this since I was a child, and every day I wake up, oh, you're going to be the voice of a doughboy, you're going to be the voice of whatever. Yeah, it's just
Yeah. That
Well,
that Dax that oh sorry, that Dax video is the clearest example to me of
God.
one day you're just sitting here and I mean,
the thing
I remember talking to him when the day of the video, and he was like, "I really think this video is going to have an impact." And little did we know that it was. In terms of the hours, and we can explore this later too. I think I said this on our initial podcast. I was a TV news anchor and reporter for many years, and that's an incredibly demanding field. And I'm glad to talk to anybody in later episodes about how to get into that
Yeah,
field.
that's a
But
whole, yeah,
it's a very demanding field. You're on the go, the deadline pressure. You see a lot of bad stuff, really depressing stories. But as demanding as that was, it was much more streamlined. You'd go in, you got a sense of what you were doing that day. You went out and you did it. You didn't have to go get the work because you would have a morning meeting and discuss the ideas. The work was there. You didn't have to invoice, you got a check. So freelancing on camera and voiceover, as I talked about today, is a perfect example. Starting working in the morning, we're still going here at night. I love owning my own business, but yesterday, Saturday, I've never been so exhausted. I slept all day long. It's a lot of work. People have got to be prepared for the truth about how hard you got to work.
yeah, I agree.
one thing I'd like to wrap this segment up. There are so many people that work within each set and with each production. It's not just the face on the screen, it's all the people that go into the production, the costume design, the set design, the writers. On average, how many people are usually involved with a production?
Oh God, that can vary. Your smaller productions, like the music video, you had a handful of people for your movies. You can have dozens and dozens of people. The logistics that go on a set are just, you have
Yeah.
what they call PAs, production assistants. They're constantly running and doing so. It really depends on the scope of the production, but it's a lot of people. And of course it's a cliche, but without those people, whenever I'm on a set, I go out of my way to say thank you to everyone, because everyone is essential on a production.
They make it possible. Yeah, I remember when I was a little boy, I was a commercial. I don't remember what it was, but I'm a kid. I was just not in the mood that day to go and film the commercial. And Joni Fenari is my big agent. And I told her, and she's still my agent. She was my agent then. She's my mom, for God's sake. And I said, I didn't feel like going that day. So I just told her, no, I don't want to go. And so she had a little sit down with me and said, there's a lot of people that depend on me going out to do a job. For example, her, then my handlers, the accountant, the lawyers, the people that do the makeup, and the people that do the wardrobe. And there's so many people that are waiting for me to do and I felt so bad, but again, I was educated. I didn't think that mattered, but we need each other. We need the guy that is doing the grip. We need the cameraman. We need the other actresses, and we need everybody. It's a village. And if someone doesn't show up, that causes problems. Like, to answer your question on Little House on the Prairie, I don't even know how many. Back then, those were filmed with Panavision film, and so we even had more. The lights were so different then because they weren't LEDs. They're, I don't even know the technology, but those were huge. That would
Yeah,
produce
awesome.
the energy of the sun.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So you had a lot of people that had to move them. You had people that had built the sets. These PAs are wonderful people because they want to get in show business. So they have to pay their dues. They have to go get coffee for the director. They have to mind their P's and Q's so that some of the best producers and stuff like that started out as PAs.
yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
you're right, Beau. Everyone in that industry, it all starts with a backbone, which is you've got to have a good crew, or whether it's a small crew or whether it's 100 people crew, it better be good.
Now, with the voiceover, it's a lot less people. If you self-record, basically, if somebody sends you a script and they're like, here's a script, send it back to me. It's just basically you working with the video production person. You send them the audio track, they
Hmm.
edit your audio track onto the video. Or Connor, and I do some, Connor does a ton of them, directed sessions where you'll have a studio acting as an intermediary between the voice talent and the client, and the studio will be recording the session, but not nearly as many people with voiceover as on
No,
camera, obviously.
not at all.
Yeah, yeah,
And one thing that you guys haven't talked a lot about, but you've alluded to, is you grew where you were starting out. You didn't have the same tools in your toolbox that you have now. So each set, each experience adds more tools to the toolbox. And that's another thing that I think is really helpful, because we're alluding to voiceover. You have to record your own stuff. So you have to have a certain amount of knowledge when it comes to how to record, compression, all those things. And so those are all really handy skills that, especially for our listeners, the more you can absorb, the more you can learn when it comes to whatever niche you're looking to get into.
Yeah, it's true.
Be
You
the
have to wear
fly
so
on the
many
wall.
hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a kid, even when became voiceover full time in 1987, that consisted of me all day long. I just drove from studio to studio, auditioning or recording, hopefully recording. And I knew what a microphone was. I didn't have to worry about there was a guy that was in charge of putting the microphone, and another guy that was the engineer, and his job was to make sure that our level was good. And I didn't all I had to worry about was the script. So to me at that point, that was what voiceover was about, was just getting it was me to interpret the copy for the listener.
Yeah.
you've always been ahead of me. 1987, you're starting a voiceover career. I'm on the dating game. Okay, so
What? I didn't
let's
know you
come
were on the dating game.
let's come. Yeah, 1987, I was on the dating game. Let's have another story. But see, look how far ahead you are of me. Voiceover versus the dating game.
The dating is pretty damn cool. In fact, for actors, there's like a hidden joke
Yeah,
that you've got to have the dating game on your bingo card. And been a lot of guys, just off the top of my head, Tom Selleck was one.
yeah.
Dating game, they relied a lot of times on agents to put good looking guys, our friend Anthony here, that get them on the show because they want viewers. And so what we're saying is, even from doing the dating game or voiceovers, the industry's changed. In 1989, I was like 18. I got yelled at a studio because I was trying to adjust a microphone for my height, which I really didn't know how to adjust a microphone. And the guy yelled at
Guys
me.
didn't like that, right?
Yeah, it was a union job. And so the business has changed. Now we have to wear so many hats. I better know how to either there's several types of tripods. You have to have one that's big enough to hold the microphone. If you don't, the microphone will fall to the floor. So you have to learn that. You have to learn audio, use Adobe Audition, or there's a million different DAWs that you can use. And so you have to learn that. You have to learn, like you said, the compression and all that stuff. It's a lot on your plate. You have to learn a lot. But if you love it, you know what? You just absorb it and you just move on. I do all of these things, and I know Anthony, I'm not speaking for him, but we do all these things because at the end of the day, we just love acting. That's it. I'm a people pleaser. I was born to be an actor. I don't know how to use a hammer, and I can barely put gas in my car, but boy, I can talk, as you guys know.
Mhm.
Oh, be quiet.
Let me bring this to a wrap. So we are going to be bringing stories from the industry. We're going to be sharing stories. Gosh, Anthony, you grew up with Rob Lowe, Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
You've worked
Mhm.
amazing with some amazing people. Connor, in your own right, from Welcome Back Carter to Little House on the Prairie, Jim Henson's Muppet Show, Sesame Street. So many great stories. And we were trying to figure out how to sprinkle these all through. But honestly, just as we talk and you just share, they come out naturally.
Yeah.
There's going to be
That is true.
so many amazing stories, you guys, that you're going to hear. Everything from Madonna to Michael Jackson to John Travolta working
Well,
with
my
John.
Madonna story wasn't exactly the most positive one, but
It
that's
is a
that,
story.
Why
Yeah.
don't we sprinkle that one in there quick?
that's a good tease. And great job of wrapping up, Beau. And again, we want to be here to encourage people, give them advice, because
Yeah.
it is, a lot of people have the dream of doing it, but a lot of times it feels like trying to wrap your arms around a sequoia redwood tree because it's
Yeah.
so big to know. It's not like when you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school, there's a pretty clear path. This is a
Oh,
winding road. It's a million different ways to get into the voice acting, the on-camera acting. News is a little bit more streamlined, and I can walk people through the process of getting a job in that field, although I will warn people that business has changed
yeah.
dramatically and not necessarily in good ways. So I'm here to give the good and the bad and the ugly on that business as well.
Really good
No,
episodes ahead,
it's
guys.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many in our industry, they go through life waiting for things to happen instead of making them happen. No, when you get an audition, it just means keep going. And a yes on audition, guess what? That just means keep going. That just keep going.
Yep.
And the last thing I'm going to say here before Beau does his beautiful poetry there at the end is I want to say all of us, Beau, Anthony, and myself, we cover so much of the media and do things in this industry. We've all probably done it somehow. We encourage you to send us an email or maybe put comments down below. I'd be happy. I know Anthony and I'm sure Beau would be happy to answer you guys because
Yeah.
maybe down in the future we can come up with some way of talking to you guys. That would be awesome so that you can submit questions live or whatever. I would be up for that because I think there's so many people that are crying out for true knowledge, not fake. And we're going to sell you this package, but the real nuts. I won't lie to you. It's the nuts and bolts of the industry.
Our producer extraordinaire, Beau, who thankfully is on our team because his knowledge.
Yes. Thank God. We wouldn't be here, folks. We wouldn't be here. In fact, the backgrounds in all of us, we wouldn't have those if it weren't for Beau.
But Beau did tell us, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a way to do call-in. So that's something I'd like to do. I love the live interaction. That would be good. So we got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. Let's spend 60 seconds. Let's wrap up with one insight. So today, to end this episode, we're going to talk about who inspired you and why.
I would say it was definitely my dad because I grew up watching him write shows. I went to go some of his shows being filmed. I think I talked about on our initial episode, watching an episode of his on Mary Tyler Moore being filmed in front. We were part of the live studio audience. And then growing up in Malibu with people like Charlie Sheen and Rob Lowe and others and seeing their success really gave me the idea of wanting to try this business. Again, I did leave LA because I wanted to be a news or sportscaster, but now I've come back to the acting and am enjoying that. Yeah, initially, definitely my dad and people I grew up with.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Probably one of the main giants in my childhood because I'd worked on Sesame Street for quite a few seasons was Jim Henson. He was very large. I don't know how tall he was. To me, he was 8 feet tall, but he was a gentle giant. He was so sweet. He never criticized anybody's work. Yeah. If we did a take and it just wasn't great, he'd go, that was pretty good, but I think we have one more in us. He was like Kermit or Ernie. Yeah, I think what do you say, guys? Why don't we just try it again to see where the magic goes? And so he never cussed. And this was a man who had a huge empire. He later created the Muppets and on.
Yeah.
He never showed ugliness to me. And he was just like a saint to everybody. I'm not saying he was perfect. We all have our things, but Jim and Frank Oz, who did Bert and Cookie Monster and stuff, both of them were gentle people that were very sweet and took care of us kids on the set and made it a wholesome family experience when we all know there's a lot of negativity out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, this is our episode 2. I wish everyone listening, it's going to be after Easter, but you guys have a great day and check in to us next week. We'll have a regular time slot that we'll be publishing on fairly soon.
Yeah.
And we'll have something to look forward to on a weekly. So I'm looking forward to that. Guys, your time is invaluable. Your insights
Well,
are really
likewise,
precious.
likewise.
Yeah. Likewise, Beau. Our applause to you, my friend. None of this would happen. He is our soul and inspiration, Beau Tiffany, ladies and
This has
gentlemen.
been an hour and 15 minutes. My God, I wish my exercise class went by this quickly.
I'll chop it down. We'll fit in a half hour. Either
That sounded really old. Boot camp class, exercise. It sounded like Jack LaLanne.
Yeah.
Boot camp.
Your jazzercise class.
Yeah.
My
No, I
Richard
did not.
Simmons workout.
No, I did not do Jane Fonda videos in 1980.
No, we may have not, but we did do Olivia Newton-John. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Physical. I want to get physical.
She was a neighbor of my parents in Malibu. That's a
What? See, that's what I mean. Every damn story.
That's another. I know. I
Christ.
feel like a name dropper, but
No, I love it. It's just between all three of us. It's like going to New York. Around every corner is some famous damn building. Okay,
rest
so
in peace, Olivia. She was a very nice woman.
Wow.
So anyway.
That was cool. Did you meet her?
Yeah. Very
Unbelievable.
nice. Very nice.
God, I love hearing good stuff.
Yeah. I tell you, this is so fun. I enjoy it. All right.
Yeah, we're lucky that we can do this shit.
Now in Wichita, I don't know that many celebrities, but Malibu, there were a lot.
Listeners, until next time.
Thank you, guys.
Peace out.